Hello everybody, it's Murray here and welcome back to my channel mstewartpaintings. On today's oil painting tutorial we're going to learn how to paint this gorgeous sunset scene over some hay bales. I'm going to teach you how to mix realistic colours, how to paint a sunset sky, and then how to paint light in sunset clouds, how to use colours and blending to push things back to make things like mountains look far off into the distance, how to then bring things forward, so like these hay bales, so that we can bring them into the foreground, and we can paint together this oil painting for beginners and intermediate painters of a sunset field. So let's get into it. So for the tutorial I used the following colours. They are titanium white, cad yellow deep hue, cad red, cad orange, a flesh tinty colour, dioxide purple, navy blue, terra verte green, raw umber brown and Payne's grey. Now I've got an 8x12 inch canvas here that I've just used raw sienna acrylic paint, which is now dry, just to create an outline. We're going to have a sunset in the background, which we're going to have a nice light source, and we're going to use that heat in colour, and I'm going to teach you how to paint sunset clouds. We're going to have just a little bit of mountains or hills in the background to give the picture some depths and have a focus point for the viewer. A nice little tree line again to push these things back into the distance and create depths. And then we're going to have the light coming down from the sun, and we're going to have these two big hay bales for you to focus on and say like a field of hay. So if you'd like to pause the video and copy down the outline, feel free to do so, and we'll get started painting. So like always, we always start at the back. So all I'm going to do is get a big dollop of titanium white, and I've used chalk just here to create a shape of a little sun. I'm not going to really do a perfect circle. I'm going to go do a squishy squash sun, and it's just going to be the bright light. And I'm going to use some cad yellow deep hue, which is a orangey yellow. I'm going to add a tiny bit of orange, just a pin drop of orange, and lots and lots and lots of white, and you should create sort of a Naples yellow. You can use a pin drop, like literally a dot of raw umber brown, and that will just suck a little bit of the colour out, because we don't want it too bright. We want it very pastel. And all we're going to do is around our big white dollop, we're just going to create the illusion of heat on the sunset sky by painting around it in this lovely pastel yellow. So take your time. All we want to do is create a glow around the sun. The reason I always use chalk when I use an outline, just like blackboard chalk, just that you would use at school, just white chalk, is the great thing is it doesn't leave any dirty marks. So it's really, really handy that if you paint your canvas a little dark colour like I have with the raw sienna, where I've just stained it sort of a tea colour, you can add things with chalk and you can just paint over them, and it doesn't leave any pencil marks that mix with your paint or anything like that. So it's a really handy tip. So there we go. So we've got this nice glow. So if you think this is the horizon, we're just sort of touching those hills in the background. So either side of the sun is going to get a little bit darker, because if you imagine the sun is the light source, we're going to add a little tiny bit of cad red to the mix. So just heating it up a little bit, and a little bit more of the cad yellow deep hue. Tiny bit of orange. We just want to make a pastel sort of peachy orangey yellow colour. So lots and lots of white. I'm using water-based oil paints today that you can buy, so they don't stink. They're perfect for beginners because they're very cheap, and you don't have to use any terps or anything to clean your brushes, so I prefer them. So all we're doing, look, we're just adding sort of a nice peachy colour to the left, and then we're going to do the same to the right, just so it's all nice and symmetrical and it all matches, and we're just gently blending that into the previous yellow, and we should have done a horizon. Now this colour is called flesh tint. It's basically, if you were painting say life paintings and you were a white person, it's basically the colour of your skin, and all it is, it's like a pinky sort of orangey peachy colour. And what it's really, really good for is between yellow, orange and then pink, it's kind of like a bridge colour that is not too pink and bright and vibrant, and it's not too orangey. So it's very, very good for using for sunsets, which is random. You wouldn't think a skin colour would be good for other things apart from portraits, but it's very good for using in landscape painting. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to block in where all this nice heat is going to be. I'm just going to go up to about here. Now you can't go from an orange sky and a yellow sky into blue. You'll get green. You can't have that. So this flesh colour, look, if we put it in, it kind of makes it a little bit more pinky. So see what I'm doing? I'm just adding some pink to our yellowy peach colour, this flesh colour. I'm going to add a tiny bit of our purple. So I've got all the cool colours on the right, all the shadow colours, and I've got all the warm colours on the left. Now the good thing about purple and brown, they suck a little bit of the colour out. So by just adding a little bit of this pink and some white, still got a hint of the previous colour in it, but now because it's got a bit of that cool purple, it sort of cools it down, and it just makes it look like it's this area of the sky is getting a little less light. It's just starting to cool down. So if you think of a rainbow, if you ever like saw a rainbow or you drew a rainbow at school, it goes kind of like yellow, orange, and then sort of like red. Well, we're kind of doing that. We're following like a colour wheel, if you sort of think of it. So by using this sort of pink soft pastel colour, we're sort of bridging between bright oranges, and then when we put the blues on in a minute for the top of the sky, we won't get green. We won't get a horrible green sunset. So this colour's kind of like our protective border that sort of patrols the area. So there we go. We're just going to block it in. And the great thing about oil paints, they're so easy to blend. They're much more forgiving than acrylics. So now, if you imagine this corner is getting less light, look, if I add blue to yellow, look, it goes a bit green. It goes a bit turquoisey. So look, let's clean our brush. If you're not using water-based oils and you're using proper oils, just use another brush. Just use a clean brush. So let's get some white and let's get some purple. So see how cool that is? So purple and blue are nice and cool. So this is why I keep them on one side. So think of yin and yang. We've got all the cool colours on one side and all the warm colours on the other side. So just by adding some... Oh, I've forgotten a colour. I'm using cerulean blue. I should have put that on the list. So my bad. I will put that at the beginning of the video. So it's just a little bit too dark. So I'm just going to add some white. As I say, you can always add a dot of raw umber brown, and that will suck some of the colour out if you want to make it look more pastel. So some cerulean blue, some white, and a hint of navy blue, and a little dot of raw umber and purple. And can you see the difference? Just by having a clean brush and no yellow on your brush, you get a lovely cool colour. Whereas if we had a dirty brush, and we just got a bit lazy, which we all do, and we used the same brush that we just previously used, or we hadn't cleaned it, we would have got turquoise. So just spending 2 minutes cleaning your brush, or just having a pack of brushes to use a different one for different segments of your painting, will make a big difference. Now what I'm doing, I'm just blocking this area in. I'm not touching the orange. I'm just kind of going right down to the middle. And then I'm going to gradually blend it. So look, it's a big jump in colour, isn't it? From a warm colour to a cool colour. So look, let's start blending it. So I'm just going to go back and forth. I'm just going to create X shapes with my brush, really gently pushing down. And because oil paints are always wet, it's really, really easy to blend. You don't need a special blender brush or anything like that. Unlike acrylics, where you might need to get a softer bristle brush, you can kind of use any brush. You just want to ease up on the pressure and just gently blend the colours together. Because in the sky, you don't really notice the change in colour, do you? It's so perfect. Nature's so perfect. it just sort of tricks your eye. So now we've done the blending, we can get some more paint and we can just block this in. Excuse the focus, it's trying to focus on my arm because I'm right in front of the camera. But I'm just using a big chunky brush because it's easier to cover a large section. I'm trying to blend it just as we come down. I'm just trying to get enough paint on my canvas. The reason I paint my canvas this raw sienna is just simply if I'm doing a pastel painting like today, it just having a darker colour underneath just allows me to see where I've missed bits in the painting. So say my paint is running out and the paint is too thin, unfortunately I can see it. So what's really great about having a darker colour underneath, you can just cheat and you can just rework areas. Now as we go up, the sky is going to get darker, so I'm just going to add some white. So cerulean blue, some navy blue to make it darker. So white, cerulean blue and navy blue. A tiny bit of red to make it more purpley. So a tiny bit of cad red, look, just a tiny bit. Now it'll make it more silvery, like more purpley. There we go. So just a little bit of red, not too much. We want it still a bit lighter than the top colour. And a tiny bit of Payne's grey, just to suck a little bit of the colour out. And it should be a shade darker, look at that. So if you imagine the top of the painting, by having it darker, not only does it frame your painting, that's me just trying to show you how to do blending by doing these X shapes. So not only does it frames your painting, I'm just fast forwarding it because all I'm doing is just blocking in the top of the painting. It's nothing technical. Just so you don't have to sit here for 5 minutes. But also it just makes it look like the light is fading off into the distance, and it just creates this illusion of your sky fading off into the distance. So look, as I said, sometimes your paint doesn't take. You might have to go over it twice. That's not a bother. So let's get some white and some orange and a clean brush. So some white and some orange, because I just made a big pile of red by accident. And all I'm going to do with that white and that orange, I'm just going to warm up some of the areas that I think need blending. And because I've got a clean brush, it's kind of more white and orange than anything. It goes over the top, and I can just warm up these areas which I think are a little bit too cool, and it just makes the transitions look much more natural and pretty. So a lot of painting is just taking your time and being patient. So think of a lot of things in life, like if you're on a diet or anything like that, it takes a long time to lose weight. You don't just suddenly lose like a stone or 20 pounds or wherever it is. It takes a few weeks or a few months, and you don't notice it till right near the end. So as is things like painting or anything like learning a language or anything, when you're going through all this messy stage and it's hard and it's difficult, don't give up. Just keep persevering. Just keep taking one stage at a time. So what we should have now is a lovely pastel sky. And now we're going to work on our sunset clouds. So we're going to learn how to paint sunset clouds in oil paints now. So again, think of the sun as a light source. Around the sun is going to be extremely bright and warm. So by mixing some cad yellow deep hue, some cad orange and lots of white, we should get that peach colour again that we've mixed previously. So I'm just going to make a nice pile of that. So let's just get some more white just to make it a little bit less harsh. And if you think like around this sun, all this cloud is just going to be like illuminated. It's going to be really, really warm because that sun, if you imagine you had a lighter or a lamp and you put your hand near it, it would look really orange and bright because that light would be shining on your hand. So this cloud is the same sort of principle. This bottom part of it is going to be all lit up, all nice and warm in colour. And by using the pastel colours, it pushes it back into the distance. We don't want to use sharp, harsh colours because it will bring it forward. We want to have something really soft so it looks like it's far, far off, like we're looking off into the sunset. And we can use this colour against the nice sort of background. Just have some straggler clouds, some little flat ones at the horizon that have broken away. Just little wispy ones. But it's your painting at home. You can always change it to suit how you would like it. And you can see, look, you can just paint over the acrylic outline. So I'm just going to add a tiny bit more orange and yellow just to make it a little bit harsher. So look, now it's getting harsher. And just adding a bit more orange than yellow this time. So it's a bit more golden. And just a little bit less white. And I'm just going to warm this area up. So we've got the really soft colour going into this darker colour. I'm just going to make this really vibrant. It's still got some white in it. So it just looks like it's glowing. So all around this area is going to look warm and glowing. And then what we can do is, because we've got that colour, we could use it on the base of these hills, of these mountains. And it will all match, because it will match the sky. And just think of a mirror. It will look really realistic because it's going to be the same shade of colour. So the great thing is once you've mixed this colour, we could even have some sunbeams. Look, we could have some, like a glow effect of that light. We can just paint that corner just so it looks like the sun is shining down on it. So actually, let's make this a little tad darker. Let's make it really vibrant. Why not? So now we've got this lovely glow. We're going to get a little bit darker as we move away from the light. So I made this big puddle of goo here, this red thing, but I'm going to show you how to do it because I kind of mucked up. So all I did was I combined cad red and cerulean blue. But I've run out of cerulean blue, so I kind of got a mess. So you want lots and lots of cad red, some white to make it nice and pastel, and then a little bit of cerulean blue just to turn it a bit more cooler. And what we're going to do, we're going to mix it, because it's a big jump, into the previous colour. So cad red, tiny bit of cerulean blue, and lots of white. And just mix it into the previous colour, just a slight bit. Just so there's not so much a jump. And you should get this kind of like purpley pink, because the cerulean blues in it is cooling it down. And what that does is it should make it look nice and natural. Now unfortunately I made a boo-boo here. I'm using water-based oil paints, and I've actually put one that wasn't water-based in my mix, and it made all splodgy. So if you're using water-based ones, try to keep using all water-based ones. I used a white that wasn't water-based, and it's hard to mix sometimes. So oil paints and water-based oil paints don't like each other, I've learned. They will work. If I hadn't told you, you wouldn't have noticed, but as I say, I'm all about honesty on this channel. I try to give honest hints and tips. I think a lot of people appreciate that. Even, like you'll see later on, I'll struggle with bits in this painting because everyone does. And I think by actually showing you how everyone struggles with things in life, and everyone struggles with painting, and you don't do everything perfect first time, and you do make mistakes, it's more realistic and more natural. So let's just go back with a fine liner to the warmer colour, and let's just put in some of these little brighter clouds now. So I'm just using a separate brush, just a little fine liner, and all I'm going to do, I'm going to just create little bits that are breaking off away from our big clouds, just to make them look more realistic. The great thing about painting is you can literally just add to it and discard bits. You can just change it up so easily. And you don't have to do everything in one go. So say you painted this painting today And there was little things, that this happens to me all the time, that bother you, really get under your skin. You think, oh, I don't like that cloud, or I don't like this. You can always come back to it. You can always wait for it to dry and then clean all your brushes and just touch it up. And sometimes just spending 5 to 10 minutes extra on a painting, just touching bits up and adding a little bit of fine detail, can make all the difference. So look here where it didn't blend, look, I'm just going over it, just touching it up. So any bits where, look, I can see an outline, just getting rid of it. So don't be afraid to change anything. And also, if you're following along at home, I'm not the be-all and like the person that you have to do everything that I'm saying. If you want to change your one a little bit and add things to your painting or take things out, it's totally up to you. It's your painting. But if you're the opposite and you want to copy this absolutely picture perfect, you're very welcome to do that as well. Don't forget to tag me at mstewartpaintings with your version of the tutorials. It is fantastic to see all these people from all around the world doing the tutorials and sending me their work. It really makes me proud. And some of you guys are absolutely amazing. Like, you could start your own YouTube channel and do this for a living because you are so talented. So all I'm doing is I'm just creating some little breakaway clouds with the darker shade. And what I tend to do, look, I tend to do this trick where I do the first couple of clouds on the horizon going flat, going sort of just straight across. And then I do the next couple of clouds kind of going diagonally towards the corners. So can you see these little ones? They're just kind of sort of going up. So imagine like a plane taking off. It suddenly goes up at like a steep angle. So the ones that are towards the horizon, I kind of do nice and flat, even though they're all like breaking apart. So I'm just going to add a tiny bit of navy blue to our mix. And I'm going to try to create a nice warm purple. So let's get a little bit of purple. Now as you can see, that's really, really dark. So by adding red to the mix, so think of yin and yang, we're adding a hot colour to these cool colours, and we're adding a little bit of white, because there's a little bit of white from that previous colour. So let's just add a little bit more navy blue, and we'll test it out. So by adding red, purple and navy blue, we should get like a purpley grey. It's like this Payne's grey colour. Let's add a little bit to it. And it'll be way too dark, so let's just add some white, and we'll see if it needs more white. Now the good thing is, look, you can test things out and see if it works or not. Now that is going to be really, really dark. And as I said, if we keep it like that, it will bring our clouds forward. We want to push them back. So by adding white to the mix, even look on my palette, it looks very silvery. It looks almost grey. Can you see that? And you'll think, oh, that's too light. If we just mix it a little bit into the previous colour. But when you lay it on the canvas, look, it does look a lot darker. It's weird, isn't it? So just remember that your colours always seem a little bit darker when you lay them on canvas to your palette. So it's always better to go lighter than dark. So what we're going to do, we're going to blend this now into the previous colour. And these areas of the clouds are all the clouds that are getting less sunlight. So they're nice and cool. So if you think it's the same trick over and over and over again, we've gone from orange to like a warm sort of burgundy sort of colour. And now we're going into a cooler colour, like a grey. And all I'm doing, like, just these tips of these clouds are just getting a little less sun. But the great thing about learning all this, hopefully you're taking all these paint recipes and you're applying them to your artwork, is you can do this on anything. So say you were painting, I don't know, like a sunset beach or a nice landscape of some kind. You can always use these colour recipes over and over and over again, and all these techniques on your own work. So there we go. We're just getting darker, and it should, because we've got that lovely blended background in the sky. Can you see how it's starting to trick your eyes and look very realistic? And as I say, if you paint your clouds and you don't like the shape of them, like you've made them a bit too chunky or anything like that, don't fret. You can always wait for it to dry, and we can always go back to it. So we've gone from warm to medium to cool. So think of the three little bears. We've gone from really warm in the orange to medium in that sort of burgundy colour to this nice cool purpley grey. And we're just blending it. And as I say, I try to leave little gaps in the clouds to look like the sunlight, the sky in the background is sort of poking through. But if you don't like the shape of your clouds, don't fret. We can always change them later on. So 99% of making and painting realistic sunset clouds and oils is nailing the colours. Nail the colours and you'll do really, really well. Now this corner here is going to be a little bit darker because this corner is going to be getting a little less sun. So let's just block her in here. Now I think I've got too much water on my brush and it's kind of like smearing. So let's just put it in. And I think what happened is when I dipped my brush in the water, as I said, I picked up the wrong colour. I'd kind of run out of colour and I went a bit too dark. But can you see there, look? Can you see by being really, really dark how it brings it forward? How it looks like it's much nearer? So look, it looks too harsh. It looks like that cloud is much nearer compared to the other clouds. So I'm just going to soften her up. I'm just going to try to blend her. Make her look less harsh. And as I say, if I don't like the shape of the clouds, because that corner now is a bit scruffy, look, it looks a bit rubbish. I can fix her later. I'm not going to fret. So if you make a mistake, don't beat yourself up. You can always change it. So look, in general, everything looks really nice. I'm going to smudge this corner with my finger to soften her up because she looks terrible. But we'll fix her later. We'll fix that area later, so don't worry. But in general, look, it looks pretty realistic already, isn't it? We're only like half an hour in. We've got a sky that looks pretty damn realistic. So let's get some of that burgundy colour, which was red and cerulean blue and white. And let's add a little bit of navy just to make it a little bit greyer again. Let's just mix up some of that grey sort of colour. A tiny bit of purple. A tiny bit of Payne's grey. And some white. We just want a warm grey, hence the fact it's got some red in with all these other colours. And what we're going to do, just like the clouds, this should match the colour in the clouds. It's just I'd run out. We're going to match this onto the mountains, onto the hills in the background. And again, just like the clouds, look, we're just going to really softly blend it. Because I'm using the water-based oils, I'm just using my fingers because there's no really nasty chemicals in them. If you're doing this at home, you might want to wear just like a pair of gloves or just use a brush. So there we go, just blend her. And it should again look like the light is hitting that mountain and now it's just getting darker. Now again, this corner, if you imagine, will be getting less sunlight, so it's going to be a lot darker. So we're just going to mix up a colour here just to make that corner look a little bit darker. We're going to use this colour which is called Terry Verde. It's just a posh sort of Latin name for green. And all we're going to do, we're just going to add some of that green to our grey. So look, we just add some green to our grey. You can use sap green and just a tiny bit of raw umber brown just to make it look more earthy. So green and brown to your grey. Still have plenty of white in it to make it nice and soft, to push it back. And just by having a little tint of that green and brown with this bluey purpley grey, we're just making this left hand corner just look a little bit more harsh and stand out against the pale horizon. So again, by having a really light colour in the background and having a darker colour in the foreground, it creates distance. Look, just creates a separation. So if you just try to think, you can't have one without another. You can't have up without down, or left without right, or cold without hot. So it's the same with yin and yang on everything. If you've got one side being warm, the other side's going to be cool. And if you think like that, it will make all your work really, really easy. Because you just work out, this area would be cool, and this area would be warm. And what colours could I use to emphasise that? So there we go. So it's all a bit scruffy, but it's getting there. It's looking really, really cool. So we're going to do a little tree line. Just again, we're not really going to put any detail. We're just going to create a little bit of a darker colour. So it's just going to be slightly darker. So green and brown and some Payne's grey. So green, brown, Payne's grey and some white. So we just want it a shade darker than the previous colour so it stands out against it. And the reason we're not really going to put any detail, we just kind of want to imply again just some trees, like a little forest, and it just gives it an added bit of depth. Now all I've got is a little flat brush, and I'm just going around our little hay bales, and I'm just literally trying to create the illusion of some bushes or trees. So I'm going to leave it there because that area will be kind of getting bleached by the sun. But all I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to make them different heights and shapes, so they're not all the same. So you don't want to make it all square and robotic. You just want to have like little shapes, some tall, some short. And again, by just being a shade darker, look, it just stands out against the mountains, just creates a little bit of separation. But no real detail, so perfect for beginners. I think this tutorial will be very hard for beginners and almost easy and quite comfortable for intermediate painting. So I think it's right in between. I think if you're a beginner, you're going to find it a struggle. And I think if you're quite a good painter, you'll find it quite easy. So right in between. But hopefully you're all picking up lots of useful tips and recipes for all these tutorials. So I'm just mixing up just the same colour, but I'm just making it a tiny bit darker with some brown just here in the corner, because as I say, this corner will be getting less sun. So all I'm doing is just using a little bit more brown in the mix, just to make these trees just a little bit bigger and darker, just to emphasize that. So a little trick. Really, really easy. So just like a clouds and the hill above it, the left hand corner is just a little shade darker. And then if I just swap back to the previous colour, I can just put in a little tree here. And I've just realised I've left a tiny gap here in my sky. How did I manage that? So I'm just going to get a clean brush and very, very carefully, because I don't want to go into that green, I'm just going to match the colour and just put in that big blank area of canvas. So see what I mean? Even me who's doing these tutorials, I forget things, I cock up all the time, I have to change things and adapt as I'm going along. Everyone does. But I like to leave all these things in the tutorials because I'm trying to prove to everyone does. You don't have to be perfect, don't beat yourself up. Ooh, look how cool this is looking. So look, this hay bale is going to have some shade and it's going to have some hot bits, because some areas are going to be facing the sun and some bits are going to have its back to the sun. So we can start blocking this in. So all the hot bits, we've got this nice orange colour, didn't we? It was orange, yellow and white. So predominantly orange with bright cad yellow deep hue and white. And all this top of this lovely hay bale is going to be bleached in the sun. Now I struggled with the hay bales, to tell you the truth, because I do not have a reference photo. I was kind of painting this out of my imagination. And the problem with me living in London, I don't really have lots of lovely hay bale fields near me. I have grey buildings and gloomy skies and the brown Thames. And so I don't really have a view like this. But the great thing about your imagination, you can create anything. So I'm just adding a little bit more orange on this one just to make it nice and warm. So I did struggle because the general principle, I kind of, from painting all the time and being like, you know, a pro in this, I kind of know how colour and light works. So I can make these paintings out of my imagination and kind of make them look very realistic. But at the same time, by not having a reference photo, it does make your life a lot harder. So you can always combine trying to find some hay bales or anything, or if you live near a field, try to take some pictures of them, because trying to figure out how to do the light on a cylinder object was quite difficult. So if you think this sort of darker orange, I'm just using here just to again make this transition a little bit softer here, because I think it goes from orange to green a little bit too harshly. So I'm just warming up this area here just to make this a little bit softer so it just looks more natural. Now I think the top will be very bright because all this area would be getting lots of sunlight, wouldn't it? Because that sun would be shining down on the hay bale. So I'm using this sort of darkish orange. So it's orange white on a mucky brush just to make it look a bit dirty. I'm just going to colour in this bit. So some cad orange and white, and you should get like a nice sort of bright orange. You can add a tiny bit of red even to the mix just to make it a bit more vibrant. We just want to block it in. We just want to create some heat. The bottom bit of the hay bale was going to be very dark because that will be in the shade, but this top bit will be getting really lots of sunlight coming over the top. So just try to gauge where the sun would be. So again, we're just using warm colours to insinuate heat. Now with your hay bales, we're just blocking her in for the time being. You're just trying to kind of want to get them like a tube. So think of like a toilet roll or something like that. You want to make just sort of like a very nice and like a cylinder, like round. So again, we can always change the shape and things of stuff. So if you find your ones go a bit wonky or anything, it's no bother. So let's make some yellow and orange to create a really bright orange, like a really vibrant one. And let's just really put some heat just to match these clouds just here on this corner. Now, as I say, when you're painting in oils, sometimes it's easier to paint in stages. So you block everything in one stage and then you come back and try to put on things like the fine detail and things like that. So all I'm doing here, look, I'm just trying to change the shape a little bit to make it a bit more realistic. But if you find that it's not working because your other areas aren't dry, like the sky and things, you can always come back to it. So you don't have to do this tutorial all in one go. As I say, I know with the tutorials, and especially if you've set aside time to paint, especially with me, I try to do everything in one go, and sometimes you just can't. Very easy with acrylics because you can dry things and then you can, what's it called? Just use a hairdryer and go over them and just go on to the next stage very quickly. But unfortunately with oils, sometimes you just got to do it in stages. I think with a lot of the tutorials, I think when you watch, people don't state that, and I think they give you the false impression that they've done it in one go, which is just not really true. Now I've got some of this yellow and orange, and I'm just going to try to create some heat coming down from the sun onto our hayfield. So if you imagine like a field that's been recently combine harvest or sort of taken all the hay taken up, and you've got these lovely bales of hay all ready to go, it's going to be quite barren. So we just want sort of like the impression of heat coming down. So we're just using this yellow and orange to create that. So again, we have this focus point in the middle with this nice warm colour that the viewer gets to look at. Let's have a little bit here, just peeking around this hay bale. And then just have some down here. And then again, it will get a bit cooler as it goes away from the sun. So by adding some red and orange, so just some red and orange to make it darker. Still want it pastel, so we just add some white. And we get some raw umber brown. We can make sort of a reddy sort of grey. So a tiny bit of yellow, just so it's not so much of a jump from the yellowy orange to it. So we're just making a darker sort of beige. Just out of that colour. It's like a beigey grey. And again, look, just like the clouds, it's the same principle. So think of a mirror, like I keep saying to you. What's in the sky we want to sort of put down on the floor. And again, it tricks your eye. Ooh, I must have a bit more red on my brush than I thought. So let's dip it in some water. Wipe it on my top. I always wear scruffy painting clothes, so I just wipe it on my clothes. Don't do that at home, children. Otherwise mum will kill you. Because oils are very hard to get out of clothes. So look, we're just going to blend that into the previous colour. So there we go. But can you see, look, how realistic this painting is starting to look without any detail? It's not got any detail whatsoever in the painting. It's just all blocked in colour. But yet it looks pretty realistic, doesn't it? So this is the thing. You don't have to be the best drawer in the world to be a good painter. So let's just add a little bit more raw umber brown. And a tiny bit of our green. And let's just make our corners darker, just like we did in the sky. And that will frame our composition at the bottom of the painting. So just like the top. By making the bottom of the painting darker, we can get you to focus towards the middle. But as I say, look, you don't have to be super gifted to paint realistic work. And oils, the texture of them and the colour of them are so realistic that you can do really fantastic work in a very quick time. And when they dry, they still look very realistic. The problem with acrylics, they are cheaper and they are faster. So they are much better to learn with if you're a beginner. But unfortunately, once they dry, they can look a bit cheap and a bit flat. They just look a bit weathered. So they don't look as pretty as oils. So finish your corner. And if you want, you can always go onto the bottom of the painting. So look, we've gone from really warm to medium to dark. So warm, medium, dark, just like the sky, just by adding these colours. So these greens and browns and greys to our warm colours. So as I say, you can go down the bottom and just frame your painting. But you should have a really lovely blocked in painting. Now, if I was you, I would leave it here and let it dry for a couple of days and do the second part of the tutorial next. But unlike listening to my own advice, I carried on. And the problem is when you're painting with oil paints and you've blocked in a painting, trying to put detail over the top, it all blends together, as you will see. So I'm going to leave it in the video to show people. But if I was you at home, I would stop the video and congratulate yourself on a job well done. And then paint the second part when your painting is a little bit drier. Because as you'll see in a minute, it's fantastic for blending, but it's hard to put any dark shades on these areas because it just all mixes together because the paint is still wet. So all I'm doing here, I'm just creating that grey that we used in the sky, and I'm just making the bottom of this hay bale darker. So this bottom part of the hay bale will be getting hardly any light. So it'd be nice and dark, and I want to make it look 3D. So at first, look, it looks very good. It looks really nice. That looks pretty decent. The colour kind of matches. So why don't we do the same on the front? So this bit, we're going to try and make it as circular as we can. But unfortunately, you won't be able to, as I say, you can blend it, but you won't be able to put the fine detail on it because it will still be wet. So look, I was trying to put little grooves and things to create all the little lines in the hay bale. So look, I'm trying to make the outline more circular. And it is working at first. It looks pretty cool. But it's still very saturated. It still looks too light. So we'll have to darken it up. So all these areas that I'm kind of working on, they didn't have much paint on them. So the bottom of these hay bales and just here, you can still see the acrylic paint outline. So the paint was going on quite well. I'm happy. Everything's kind of moving along. But it was later on when I was trying to put darker tones over the top of this one. Because if you think of what we did with the mountains and the clouds, you want to go from warm sort of orange to sort of more sort of burgundy and grey and into really dark tones. So hot, medium, cool. So here at the bottom where I'm going over the acrylic outline, the paint's taking really, really well. But later on when I was trying to darken it up, that's when I was running into all types of trouble. So as I say, it might be easier to, when you've blocked in your painting, to stop and then let it dry for a couple of days and then do some of this fine detail over the top. But you can work on like the blending just like here. So it's valuable to watch the tutorial because it's good to actually see how oils differ from acrylics. So I'm just adding a bit of that Payne's grey, the green and the brown. I'm adding a little bit of red just to warm it up so it's not too harsh. And I wanted to create a really dark shadow tone. Let's add a tiny bit of navy to make it even cooler. But I'm not using black. Black is so overwhelming. I don't want to use black. And over here, this area of the hay bale was going to get hardly any sunlight. And again, this didn't have any real oil paint on this area. So the paint took really, really nicely. I'm happy. We've got this dark sort of blue. It looks realistic. And we can even use that look to outline the hay bale. Look at that. That is starting to look realistic. So all the signs were going well. But when I tried to do it on the second hay bale, because this paint is all wet, it's just all mixing. So even though this colour should be, look at it on the left hand side, it should be a lot darker, shouldn't it? It's just mixing into the previous warmer colours, the orange and the light grey. And no matter how much I keep putting on, it's not having it. It's going, Murray, I don't care. We like to blend and we're not going to lay down. So unfortunately, I was getting the rage. Obviously here on a really nice, lovely, mellow tutorial, I would never swear or bang things, but in real life I was getting really mad. So I was trying all different types of things. I was trying red and brown, and I was trying to darken this area up, thinking, oh, if it worked on the other one, if I just darken this area up, maybe it'll work on this one, and then I can kind of put the highlights over the top. But then I had the same problem where if you had a dark background and you try to use lighter colours over the top, it would all just turn to mush. So again, I was just trying to create a middle tone here, just so it blends, so there's not so much of a jump. And then let's get some really dark brown and some Payne's grey to make a really dark colour look. A little bit of blue even, and some orange just to warm it up a tiny bit. And a little bit of white. So we've got this really dark, cool grey. And I was thinking, look, I should have taken my own advice, but look, it just wasn't taken. It's nowhere near dark enough. It's just all smudging together. So as I say, I like to leave these things in the tutorials because I want to show people, like, even if you're the best artist in the world, you can only be as good as your tools and your equipment. So don't beat yourself up. If you're finding like this happens to you at home and you're watching and you're finding, you know, like certain areas, look, this side seems to be really doing well, look, and everything's nice and sharp. But even look here, when I start to try to do the same technique, look, it's just the paint is just all mixing. And that is just simply because it's wet. So I think with a lot of the oil painting tutorials, I think if people just said, look, I didn't do this in one day, I did this over like a week or something like that, and they actually showed you that, you can see that you're not some weird alien that can't do something. It's very normal. It's just some things you just got to wait for them to dry and have a little bit of patience. So look, even if I got really dark, because I was trying all different type of things, I was trying to put in these like little hay, bristles and the sort of circles you get. It was just all churning. And even if I did the opposite, look, if I made a light colour, like a light yellow, a bit like the horizon, that lovely sort of Naples yellow, and tried to put highlights on the top to make the hay bale look like it was sort of glistening in the sun, it just wasn't mixing. It's just turning into a big blurry mess. So, is what it is. It was all going a bit Pete Tong, as we would say in Britain, a bit wrong. And being really stubborn, just get trying. So, because it's slow progress. Look, you are doing some things, so you think it's that false like illusion that you think you're getting better. But if I just waited it to dry, as you'll see in a minute, you can do all these things. But this area, for some reason, it did actually work. So all I'm doing, I'm just using a little bit of Naples yellow, and I'm just putting some highlights on the illusion of some bales that are off into the distance. So just like the tree line, there's no detail. I've just created some shapes of some cylinders to imply that there's some hay bales off into the distance. And I was just trying to create some sunlight coming down onto the freshly cut hay, just to make it look nice and warm and you have something to look at. So this area kind of worked. So it is looking nice, it's just not as dark as I want, and it's not as professional as I want. So I try with a fine liner with a really dark colour just to sort of create the shape of the cylinder. So as I say, it's trying to nail the shapes. So I was just trying to make it more rounded. So I realised it wasn't working. I was flogging a dead horse, and I put my ego aside and I gave up. But what I did do just before I finished is I just got a little bit of the yellow that we mixed up, which was Cadge Yellow Deep Hue and white, and I just created some sunbeams because for this reason. But again, it was still churning up a bit. But I thought before I finish, why not get a clean brush, a fine liner, and just put some sunbeams in, so when we come back to her, when she was dry, I can actually start refining everything and make it look how I want it. So all I was doing, I was just using a really thin brush. I was just connecting to that orange that we had on the mountains with a little bit of yellow, just making it look a bit more seamless. But I think, as I say, sometimes you just got to put your ego aside and just go, look, it's not working. Like, take a chill pill and go do something else for a couple of days and come back to it. So as I say, just add a little bit of yellow, just use my finger to smudge it, just so we've got this lovely sort of light beacon to have a view. And then I gave the painting about 3 or 4 days, because they're water based. The oil paints dry really, really quick actually. They dry very, very quick. And then I came back to it. So this is the same painting a few days later, but this is so much easier because it is now dry. Obviously, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I'm a bit OCD with my paintings, where I try to do everything I can on them. So I still ran into the same problem in some parts of it. I could have actually done this in 3 parts. But, as I say, it's better to be true to yourself and keep going and try to do the best you can. So I was using some white and yellow just to put some highlights on the hay bristles here. So I was trying to make it look like it had texture by just having little bits of light and dark. And then I was getting some of the yellow, adding that to the mix, the Cadge Yellow Deep Hue, to get that really nice golden colour. So again, just putting on some fine detail now. So I'm using a small brush. I've got this yellow and orange just to give this hint to match the colour of the sun, just on this corner here of the hay bale. Going to use the same colour to straighten out this cylinder effect. because now this area is all dry, it's so much easier look to change the shape of the hay bale because that background is always really dry. So I'm trying to make it more rounded, and again that bum of the hay bale will be getting more sun. I'm going to clean my brush and get some raw umber brown, some Payne's grey, a little bit of white to create a nice cool grey. So there we go, let's add some blue, some navy blue, and then get some of my fine liner. And then now, hopefully, the shadows, I think that's still a bit too light, let's get darker. Now we can start putting the shadows on. So I'm just going to add less white, I'm just going to mix the same colour, but I'm just going to have less white. So Payne's grey, blue, and raw umber. So look, I'm just making a darker, dirtier version. And then all I'm going to do, look, now this is dry, hopefully, yes, here we go. This is what we should have done in the first place. Should have just left it to dry. Look how dark that looks compared to previously. Because the background is now dry and the paint isn't all mixing. So, hooray! We got there in the end. Because we really want to create harsh shadows to bring these hay bales right into the foreground. So if you remember with all the other tutorials, the darker the shadow, the nearer it will look to the viewer. So by making this look really dark and have some nice harsh shadows, these hay bales come closer towards the viewer. And what it does is it pushes back the background. So it makes the sunset look far off into the distance. And these hay bales look really close to you. It's just a trick using, again, colour. So we're going to have a big shadow here. We're just going to have a rough shadow. I'm not going to make it perfect. We can just start blending it down here. But what a difference. Just from letting it dry, we can really use these harsh colours. As I say, we don't want to use black because black looks cartoony. So we don't want to make like a black. We want to use this off sort of really dark grey. Payne's grey is a really good substitute for black. So let's get some red and let's mix some orange. My brush is still a bit dirty from using that grey. Let's add a little bit of white, create sort of like the burgundy sort of tone. A little bit of, there we go. And all I'm going to do, I'm just going to mix that red into this dark colour that we mixed. Just because it's so harsh, I'm just doing a bit like what we did in the clouds. I'm just trying to create a bridge tone in between. So by using that burgundy, we can just sort of lighten up areas. So as I say, a lot of painting is going back and forth, reworking areas, fixing areas. So let's get some red and some brown. So red, scarlet red or cad red and raw umber brown. And let's just create some harsh lines where the tractor or something has gone across and create grooves in the hay. Just on the floor. So we're just going to create these rough lines. They don't have to be perfectly straight. In fact, they look quite cool if they're all sort of rugged because the floor is all churned up. And the reason we're doing them red is because the sun will be really heating them up in areas. And we can go over areas, as I say. We just want to create the illusion of some heat from that sun. And if they're too bright, look, you can always just use your finger and just smear them. Or you can use a blender brush and just soften them up. We just want some detail in the foreground. So let's get some orange and yellow. And we're just going to lighten the ones nearest the sun up. So by just using the same colour that's on the top of the hay bales, we're just softening them. We're just making them look like they're nearer to the sun. They're still there, you can see them, but they're just not anywhere near as harsh. They're just getting bleached by that sunlight. So easy trick. Have them dark at the bottom and light near the sun. You can even have some coming across here. Just trying to work out where the light would be. And then let's get a clean brush. And while that's sort of drying, let's create some sky holes. So do you remember early in the tutorial, not only did I cook up the hay bales, I cooked up the clouds. So I was going for the whole tally. I was trying to mess things up to show you. It's all strategic, of course. To show you how you can just fix things. As I say, don't beat yourself up. So, because this area is now dry, all I've done is just mix some yellow and white, and I'm poking with a fine liner, nice clean brush, some sky holes. So look at this. Just by going over the top and painting just some little holes in between my clouds, I can make them look hyper realistic by just spending an extra 2 minutes fixing them. So this is what I was saying about your painting. If there's ever things that bother you, obviously we're doing this very quickly. It's a tutorial. It's very, very detailed, but as I say, we're still relaxed and having fun with it. But if you really, really want to go the full hog and make your photo realistic work, you can always go back to your work and just keep refining it till you're happy with it. So I'm just using some orange and yellow just to, again, refine the shape of my hay bales. I can even use a little bit of this highlight to create the circular sort of twirl that you get in the middle. You get that lovely sort of grooves where all the hay's all barreled together, and you get these lovely circles and bristles. So we're just trying to create that, sort of make it look texturized. And we use the same color here, just so it looks like a little bit of heat is coming across, just so everything all matches. We just like the background, we just don't want any harsh jumps in color. A lot of painting realism is trying to be realistic by refining your work, by just making things look soft, not so harsh. So I'm just leaving gaps between the dark colour and the light colour to again look like it's texturized. Let's just sort out the shape. So let's try and make this barrel a bit neater. So let's make it curve around a bit more. And this is so much easier because it's dry. Look, the paint's just taken to the canvas so much quicker. So there we go. So that's now looking rounder. And we're just going to put some little scrapes and twirls in it. So again, just to make it look texturized. And then let's just get some white and add a really bright highlight. So some white and yellow. So white and cad yellow. More white than anything, just so you get a really bright white. And then all I'm going to do, which is my fine liner, I'm just going to put a really harsh highlight. It'll kind of look like the sky is shining down onto the edge of that hay bale, and I just want to curl it over. So again, it looks nice and cylinder shaped. But again, look, it's starting to mix. That is the joy of oils. They are so much harder than acrylics. If you haven't got any patience like me, they are very hard. But as I say, the harder the climb, the better the view. So they do make your work look 10 times better. So you got to put up with it. So again, just put some highlights here. These bristles would be getting really bleached in the sun, wouldn't they? So take your time. I just want to say really quickly, if everyone is watching, we hit 18,000 subscribers yesterday, I think it was, or the day before. So I just want to say a massive, massive thank you. The channel is really, really growing. It's doing really fantastically well. I haven't been able to do as many videos as I liked at the moment because I've been teaching loads and I've been doing loads of work with galleries and things like that. But I will try to do as many tutorials as I can this year for everyone. But thank you so much for supporting the channel, and as I say, tagging me in all your work and everything like that. It's really, really lovely that so many people are learning. And the great thing about YouTube is totally free. So it's an honor for me to give you all these tips and free things, and for you all around the world to learn and make you happy, especially at the moment where there's lots of stuff going on in the world and people are really stressed and finances are hard and things. To have people do, there's loads of people like me who do lots of nice things for free out there. Even things like AI now, where you can use ChatGPT totally for free and you can use it to help you learn things and things like that. So there are nice guys out there, nice women out there. But thank you so much for supporting the channel. And don't forget to share the videos if you've got things like Facebook, because all your other artist friends might find them useful. And that's the whole point of the channel. So I'm just getting some orange and yellow, and I'm just putting some bristles in, just with a little fine liner. When you're doing it, it's nice and relaxing. It's nice and chilled. Just put it on the little fine details. So everything's starting to get there. We've got all the sort of bristles on our hay bales. Everything's starting to take shape. So we're going to start putting some of the harsh shadows on now. So we're going to get some red and some brown. So cad red and some raw umber brown. You can add a tiny bit of the navy if you want to. And we're going to try and make a really sort of dark, sort of burnt sienna sort of colour. So red and brown make a really warm burnt sienna. And we want to make a really sort of silhouetted one. So we're going to add a tiny bit of Payne's grey and some of this raw umber brown. And we can even add a little bit of navy and a tiny bit of white to cool it down. So if you imagine a really hot place like a desert, you get really, really harsh shadows. But because it's so warm and the sun is so intense, they are still got a bit of red in them. So we're just going to make this sort of really bright, dark, sort of shadowy colour. But we don't want to use black, as I say, because black is just so harsh. It sort of nullifies everything. So by having still a little bit of warmth in this colour with the red, it makes that the shadows look really, really harsh, but also that they're still nearer to the viewer, but just not as comic-y as something like black. So again, just using a fine liner. It's so much easier if you have a really sharp, thin brush to do fine detail. So I'm just trying to create the shadow, and again some bristles. But again, finding that it's starting to mix. Just being patient. Sometimes if you just thicken up the paint, if you ever find that it does mix, you can always get more paint on your brush. Because the thicker the paint, the more it takes to the canvas. So sometimes it's just because your brush has got too much like liquid or water, if you're using the water-based ones like myself. And that's why the paint isn't taking. So if you always just thicken up the paint, just get a big blob of paint, you can always put on these harsher shadows over the top. So let's do the same on the other one. So we just want to bring these guys closer. I think this guy looks closer than the right hand one, so we'll have to darken up the right hand one, but we're just trying to put this fine detail on. And as I say, if you're watching at home, oh God, what have I done? I've just smidged it with my finger. Well, I can't just paint over that. I'll literally have to blend it now. So, sod it. Let's go. Everything has gone wrong so far, so why not this? Why not? We can make it work. I can make anything work. Have a positive mindset. That's the whole thing. So I must have had some on my finger, and when I've smudged it, it's just made it really dark. But that shadow is quite harsh. We can fix it. So let's get some red. And some orange, and let's just make a really dark red. So, and an in-between colour, and let's just bridge this shadow. So we're going from really, really dark to this really dark red, and that should take some of the harshness out of it. So my bad. But as Bob Ross says, you can always have happy accidents. Some of the best things in life happen by mistake, don't they? So let's use this colour. Let's see if it works. It's kind of cool, this colour. So you can put all the little shadows that aren't getting as much light. This warm colour. Let's try and create this circular motion. I wonder if people actually live in places like this who are viewing the videos, because that would be really cool. If someone actually lived in really, really beautiful places, had ideas for tutorials that were actually real places, and we could create a video of these real places, that would be really cool. Because as I say, I don't have a view unfortunately like this, but the great thing about your mind is you can create anything from it. You can imagine anything. So even though I'm stuck in gloomy London and it's raining again, like forever, it's always bloody raining here, I can create somewhere where I want to go. So let's get some yellow, red and white just to make a lighter version again, a more hotter version. So look, we've got cool, medium, light, just like we did before. And let's just blend this area just to make the shadow look less harsh. It might actually work out really well. It does. Way! Happy accident. So it's kind of worked out. So there we go. Let's just make it more circular again. Let's go back to the medium one. Let's just make it a little bit darker here, because this area wouldn't be getting as much sun, would it? It's sort of have its back. So this sort of circle would be quite dark still. There we go. Create that sort of roundness. So I'm liking that. That sort of area looks quite nice. And this one's starting to look round and nice. And the shadow is curling round, so it's all starting to go well now. So let's get some raw umber. And let's start making the shadows underneath it really harsh. So let's just make this corner harsher. Excuse the focus of my shoulder. Looking at my lovely deltoids. So here we go, let's just put in this harsh shadow just so it all matches. So there we go, just colour that very bottom bit. Damn you, focus, what are you doing? So I'm just shading the bottom, just so it's a little bit harsher. It looks like it's getting a bit of shadow. There we go. And then all I'm going to do is just create some bristles just to match it, just so there's not a big jump between that really dark shadow and the top. And then if we zoom in for you, we'll start creating the circle in the bristles. There we go. Now the background mountain still looks a bit scruffy, doesn't it? So we'll fix that in a minute. The sky looks good when we're this zoomed in. So just using a fine line and just putting tiny little marks to create bristles and texture. Really, really thin. It's like having a really, really sharp pencil is so much easier, look, to do fine detail. Just having a really thin brush. So again, just here in the middle, I'm just trying to create some bristles, just so it brings the two areas together. So it's not so harsh in colour as the bottom of the hay bale, and it's not really, really light. And we can do the same here on the other one. So just trying to create that sort of circular motion where we've blocked in the colour, we're just putting back the detail. So say a lot of painting is just going back and forth. If you change an area because you don't like it, you've just got to put back the detail. Is what it is. And then I've cleaned my brush and I've just got some bright white, and I'm just going to put this, look, right on the tip of my hay bale, just so it looks like it's getting bleached in the sun. So it's got that really sharp edge. See how that works? It just looks like it's getting bleached. And then just to make it look circular, I'm just going to pull the paint around. There we go. Just pulling it downwards. See how that works? Just so it looks like that shimmer on the top of that hay bale. And then I'm just going to go into bright cad yellow. So from white to cad yellow. And just again, just pull it down. Just so it looks like it's glowing in the sunlight. Really, really easy. Just pull the paint down. Just blend it, just so it looks all natural. And I'm just going to put back some of that yellow and orange. Because remember, this is a little bit facing away from the sun. So it's not going to be as bright. And again, it will just bleach out some of that fine detail. And then I'm going to get a fan brush and some of our really dark shadow colour that we mixed up, which was raw umber, the Payne's grey, and some red. And I'm just going to put some texture. Now it's going to look really harsh at first because the paint's fresh, but we can always smudge it to make it look less harsh. But we're just going to try and put some texture in our field. So it'll look cartoony at first, but then we'll smudge it and make it look less harsh. So these are all sort of divots in the ground. But as I say, it looks a bit harsh at first. And then we're going to go kind of into a red. So we're going to make that sort of really harsh red again. So burnt umber and red to create a really dark red, like a burgundy. And we're going to do the same thing. So some of the shadows we're just going to highlight. So some are still very harsh, but they're in the sunlight. We can put some of our grains, sort of our divides back in. There we go. And then let's do the same trick here. Now the great thing about a flat brush is because it's texturized already, a fan brush, is it's really, really good for doing things like grass, painting things like trees, hair, anything like that which is texturized, because the brush head is shaped like a fan and it's really bobbly. And then I'm just going to lighten it up with some orange and yellow, just like we did previously. Just so nearer the sun, look, these ridges aren't as harsh. There we go. The same on these shadows. We're just making everything look a little bit softer, look, more natural. So even here, they're just a bit more yellowy and orange because it's nearer the sun. Just create some of these grooves. It's looking pretty, all coming together here. So that's why I keep saying to you, you've got to have faith in yourself and believe it will all come good at the end. Don't rush. If you find the video hard, you can always pause it and do it in stages. Take your time, even if it takes you a week. So let's make some yellow and sort of orange, create a gold colour. Again, let's just make them less harsh just here, just so that sun is sort of bleaching them. Just want to make everything really natural. It's all starting to work. And just think this is all from imagination and it looks really real. So I'm liking this area. This bit is still a bit too harsh. Still a bit too dark. So let's just get some of the burgundy colour. Just warm it up a little tad. Just a tad. Just have hints of that sunlight poking through. You get these little glimmers, don't you? And let's get some orange and yellow and just highlight this area. We've got all the fine detail on it, so now we can just put some little highlights on top just to create that glow, just so all the colours match. We don't want to lose all our hard work, so we'll just do a little bit and then just a little bit of glow around here, coming around the hay bale. So that's looking lovely. Ooh. There we go, and I just neaten that up because I just painted over it. My harsh colour, so I'm just going to go back over it. So as I say, the back and forth, the back and forth. And then let's just sharpen this shadow here. And we can do the same with you. And then we're just going to make some of our hay bales just in the background just a little bit more nicer. Just using some of that dark orangey gold. I've got my glasses on now, so I look all serious. And then very, very last, let's just neaten this mountain up. So I'm just making some of that lovely cloud colour, just out of some of that flesh tone and some orange and yellow, a little bit of white, and I'm just going to make this look less scruffy and make the light sunbeams coming down. And any bit of the canvas that we've missed, we're just going to colour over it. Look how we all zoomed in. Some of the paintings always look scruffy when you're this zoomed in. My work especially is very blocky, and when you zoom it out, when we get to the, in a literally about 30 seconds, the whole painting should look hyper realistic, all because of the colour. So here we go. Just neaten this area here. Let's get some yellow and orange and just finalise these last bits of light. Put some lovely highlights just here. Really subtle, just to create some division. And then let's just pull some of that white and yellow. So just white and yellow on a clean brush, just coming down from that really bright sun, just to make her look really beautiful. And I think finally we've got there in the end. Look at that. So I haven't signed her because she's still wet, but she looks fantastic. So you've learned how to paint a sunset in oil paints with this beautiful background pastel sky, how to not get a green sky by using the flesh tone in between the orange and the blue, how to paint light in clouds to get perfect sunset clouds in oil paints, how to put sky holes in them to make them look more realistic, how to reflect the light onto your background and foreground and create depths again by using pastel colors in the background and using darker colors and shadows in the foreground to bring things closer to you, and then how to refine things, and then also how to take your time and not try to do everything all at once, to pace yourself and trust the process and keep going even when it gets hard, and try to break through that and keep going till you get something that you're happy with. So really difficult painting, but also a really rewarding painting. It looks super realistic and it looks really cool. I'm really happy with it. So thank you for putting up with me struggling in this painting, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've also learned that you don't have to be perfect in one go, and you can always come back to things and try your best. So I hope you enjoyed the channel. Like and subscribe if you haven't done so again, and we'll see you soon. Take care, guys. Bye.